Calm is power. Train your mind to respond, not react. Introduction. Calmness is not a sign of weakness. It's the power to control your response in any situation. In a world that's constantly pulling us in different directions, it's easy to get caught up in reacting to every little thing. Whether it's stress at work, misunderstandings with others, or just the overwhelming pace of life, our instinct is often to respond quickly, sometimes without thinking. But what if the key to handling everything that life throws at us isn't reacting right away? What if true power lies in the ability to pause, think, and choose your response? Calm is power. Train your mind to respond, not react, is about learning how to stay grounded no matter what happens. It's about developing the ability to pause in those high-stress moments, control your emotions, and respond in a way that aligns with your values. Instead of reacting out of impulse, you'll start choosing the most thoughtful and effective responses, whether you're dealing with conflict, uncertainty, or just the everyday challenges life throws your way. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but the rewards are worth it. When you learn how to manage your emotions and keep your composure, you'll find you handle stress better, make smarter decisions, and improve your relationships. The ability to respond, not react, changes how you approach life. It brings clarity, calmness, and a sense of control. If you're ready to break free from emotional reactions and move toward thoughtful, purposeful responses, you're in the right place. This is your guide to unlocking the calm within, gaining more control, and navigating life's ups and downs with greater ease. Chapter 1. The true meaning of calm is power. Calmness is often seen as a passive state, something that happens when there's nothing to react to, when everything is smooth and easy. But in reality, calmness is an active choice, one that requires strength and practice. Most people are quick to react to the situations around them. When things don't go according to plan, when life throws a curveball, the instinct is to immediately respond, often without thinking. This reaction can come in the form of anger, frustration, defensiveness, or anxiety. In those moments, it feels like our emotions are in control, dictating how we act, how we feel, and how we see the world. But what if, instead of reacting to what happens, we took a moment to pause and choose how we respond? What if the real power lies in the ability to stay composed, to let go of the immediate rush of emotion, and to act in a way that aligns with our true selves, not just the rush of the moment? That's where calmness comes in. The ability to remain calm in the face of challenges is one of the greatest forms of strength. It's not about ignoring your feelings or pretending you're unaffected by the chaos around you. It's about choosing how to engage with those feelings, acknowledging them, and then responding in a way that serves you rather than hurting you. Consider this. How many times have you found yourself in a situation where your immediate reaction was to snap, to get angry, or to retreat into frustration? Think about a time when you allowed a stressful situation to control you, when you felt helpless and overwhelmed by your emotions. How did that turn out for you? Maybe you ended up regretting something you said or did. Maybe you hurt someone or made a decision you later wished you hadn't. It's a familiar feeling. Most of us have been there, more times than we care to count. The thing is, that initial rush of anger, frustration, or anxiety doesn't have to control you. What if, instead of letting that emotional reaction dictate your actions, you took a step back and allowed yourself the space to breathe? What if you took a moment to pause, to really process the situation, and to choose how you want to respond? That's the power of calmness. It's about creating that space between what happens and how you choose to react. It's about becoming the one who controls the response, not the one who gets swept up by the current of emotions. One of the key elements of calmness is understanding that it's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about accepting them, understanding them, and then making a conscious decision about how to move forward. Emotions are a natural part of being human. They are powerful signals that tell us when something is important, when something needs our attention. But emotions, when unchecked, can also lead us down a path of regret, stress, and unnecessary conflict. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions, it's to change how we engage with them. When you remain calm, you are not denying yourself the experience of feeling. Instead, you are creating a mental environment where those feelings can exist without overwhelming you. You learn to observe your feelings as they arise, without immediately jumping to action. This simple shift can transform the way you navigate every part of your life. Whether you're dealing with a difficult situation at work, having a disagreement with a loved one, or just managing the daily stresses that life throws at you, the ability to pause and respond thoughtfully makes all the difference. Think about a time when you stayed calm in a stressful situation. Maybe it was a conversation that could have easily turned into an argument, but instead you kept your cool, listened carefully, and responded in a way that de-escalated the tension. Maybe it was a moment when you felt your blood pressure rising, but you chose to take a deep breath, collect your thoughts, and move forward in a more controlled way. In those moments, you probably felt a sense of power, not the kind that comes from yelling or controlling others, but the kind that comes from being in charge of yourself, from knowing that no matter what happens around you, you have the strength to stay grounded. That sense of power is what makes calmness so valuable. It's the ability to stay centered, no matter what. When you're calm, you can think more clearly. You're not swept away by the tides of your emotions. Instead, you can make decisions with clarity, choose your words carefully, and act in a way that's aligned with your true values. Calmness gives you the freedom to choose how to respond, and with that freedom comes empowerment. In contrast, when we react impulsively, we give up that power. We become slaves to our emotions, allowing them to dictate our behavior. This often leads to outcomes that don't serve us. For instance, when someone cuts us off in traffic, our immediate reaction might be anger. We might honk the horn, shout, or make a gesture. But after the fact, what does that reaction really achieve? Does it make us feel better? Does it change the other person's behavior? In most cases, the answer is no. Instead, we're left with a heightened sense of stress, a racing heart, and a lingering sense of irritation. On the other hand, when we choose to respond calmly, we are in control. We might still feel the rush of anger, but we don't let it control us. We don't let it lead us to make decisions we'll regret. Instead, we pause, breathe, and decide how we want to react. Maybe we choose not to engage. Maybe we remind ourselves that the situation is not worth our energy. Or maybe we decide to move forward without letting it affect us. Regardless of what we choose, the important thing is that we are choosing. This ability to choose is what gives calmness its power. It allows us to take back control over our lives, our emotions, and our actions. It's the difference between living reactively, where everything around us dictates how we feel and behave, and living intentionally, where we decide how to respond to whatever life brings our way. When you train yourself to respond, not react, you create a sense of inner peace. You stop being at the mercy of outside circumstances, and you begin to shape your own path, guided by the calm strength that comes from within. This isn't to say that it's always easy. There will be moments when it feels impossible to stay calm. There will be moments when emotions threaten to overwhelm you. But the key is to remember that calmness is a skill, one that can be developed with practice. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. And the more you practice, the more you'll begin to notice a shift in the way you handle stress, conflict, and uncertainty. Every time you choose to respond with calmness, you reinforce that inner strength. Every time you pause before reacting, you build the mental muscle that allows you to stay centered in the face of adversity. Over time, this practice becomes second nature. You start to approach every situation with a calm mind, knowing that you are in control no matter what happens. This is the power of calmness. It's not just about staying composed when things are easy, it's about having the strength to stay calm when life gets tough. It's about becoming someone who responds thoughtfully, instead of someone who reacts without thinking. And that, ultimately, is the greatest power you can have, the power to control yourself, no matter what the world throws your way. Chapter 2. Reacting versus responding. The key difference. We all know what it feels like to be in a situation where we're on edge, where something happens, and we immediately feel the urge to react. Someone says something that bothers us, or a problem at work puts us under pressure, and without thinking we react. It could be anger, frustration, defensiveness, or even shutting down. It's as if something inside us takes over, and we're not really in control of what happens next. The issue isn't necessarily that we feel these emotions after all, they are a normal part of being human. The problem arises when those emotions dictate how we act, often in ways we regret. What if, instead of simply reacting, we paused, took a breath, and chose how to respond? What if the real power lies not in our emotional response, but in our ability to make a conscious decision about how to handle the situation? This shift in thinking the difference between reacting and responding is crucial for living a life that's in line with our true values, rather than letting our emotions push us around. Understanding the difference between reacting and responding can transform how we handle challenges and interact with others. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It's about choosing to take a step back and asking ourselves, how do I want to handle this? Reacting is instinctive. It's what we do when we don't have time to think, when something catches us off guard and we don't stop to process it. Reactions are fast and usually based on our emotions. They come from a place of automatic thinking, from ingrained habits or past experiences. In those moments, we are often at the mercy of our feelings. If we feel hurt, we might lash out. If we feel threatened, we might withdraw. If we feel challenged, we might become defensive. Reactions, in this sense, are often knee-jerk responses that we don't fully control. On the other hand, responding is intentional. It's something we choose to do, even if we're feeling strong emotions in the moment. When we respond, we take the time to think about how we want to show up, regardless of how we feel. It requires us to pause, breathe, and create some space between what's happening and how we choose to react. Responding allows us to act with purpose, to engage in a way that aligns with our values, rather than being controlled by our emotions. The best part is that responding puts us back in the driver's seat of our own life. We can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. This distinction may seem subtle, but it's powerful. When you react, you're simply a product of your emotions and the external circumstances around you. Your feelings take over, and before you know it, you've said something you didn't mean, or made a decision that doesn't reflect your best interests. Reacting is a reflex. Responding, however, is a skill. It's something you can train your mind to do, and over time it becomes second nature. In practice, the difference between reacting and responding can change the entire course of a situation. Imagine you're in a meeting at work, and a colleague makes a suggestion that you think is wrong. Your initial reaction might be to argue, to jump in with your own point of view, and maybe even to criticize their suggestion. That's a reaction. It's automatic, based on your feelings about the situation. However, if you take a moment, pause, and reflect before speaking, you might find that you're able to respond in a more constructive way. You could acknowledge their point, offer a solution, or even ask a clarifying question. Your response is thoughtful, not impulsive. You've made a conscious decision to handle the situation in a way that doesn't escalate tension. Or think about a personal situation, like when a loved one says something that hurts your feelings. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself, to argue or to withdraw. But when you respond instead of reacting, you choose to take a deep breath, understand where they're coming from, and address the issue calmly. You could express how you feel without blaming them, or perhaps ask them to clarify their thoughts. Responding in this way prevents the situation from becoming a bigger issue, and it creates space for healthy communication and resolution. It's easy to see why the distinction between reacting and responding is so important. Reacting often leads to unnecessary conflict, miscommunication, and regret. Responding, on the other hand, leads to more thoughtful and productive outcomes. But shifting from reacting to responding takes practice. It's not something that happens overnight, and it's not something that's always easy. When we're in the heat of the moment, it's tempting to let our emotions take over. The trick is to train yourself to recognize those moments before you react. The more aware you become of your emotional triggers, the easier it will be to pause and respond with intention. One of the best ways to practice this shift is to start small. The next time you feel your emotions rising, whether it's anger, frustration, or anxiety, take a moment to pause. Don't immediately say or do anything, just breathe. In that brief moment of pause, ask yourself, how do I want to handle this? This simple act of mindfulness can make all the difference in how the situation plays out. It's amazing how just a few seconds of reflection can help you steer a conversation or a situation in a more positive direction. Another way to practice responding rather than reacting is to keep a journal. Reflect on situations where you reacted impulsively. How did it feel afterward? Did it serve you well, or did it create more problems? On the flip side, think about moments when you responded thoughtfully. How did that feel? Did it lead to a better outcome? Journaling helps you connect the dots between your reactions and your long-term goals, so you can recognize the situations where you want to respond differently. It's also helpful to remind yourself that reacting doesn't always solve the problem. In fact, more often than not, it makes things worse. When we react quickly, we might not have all the facts, we might not understand the other person's perspective, and we might not have considered the long-term consequences of our actions. Responding gives us time to gather our thoughts, reflect on the situation, and make a more informed decision. It's about taking control of your emotions rather than letting them control you. Of course, there will be times when emotions do get the best of us. We all slip up from time to time. The key is not to beat yourself up over it, but to learn from it. Every time you notice that you've reacted instead of responding, take it as an opportunity to grow. Ask yourself why you reacted the way you did, and think about how you could respond differently next time. Over time, this kind of self-reflection will strengthen your ability to pause and choose your response in any given situation. Reacting and responding are two different paths, but they don't have to be mutually exclusive. The truth is, we can all react in moments of intense emotion. That's natural. But what separates those who thrive from those who struggle is the ability to recognize when we're reacting and shift to responding. It's the ability to stop ourselves in the heat of the moment, to take a breath, and to choose a path that aligns with our values. By choosing to respond instead of react, you're building emotional intelligence and creating healthier, more positive relationships with yourself and others. The next time you find yourself in a situation where you feel the urge to react, remember, you have the power to pause. You have the ability to choose how you respond. And that is where your true strength lies. Chapter 3. Training your mind for emotional discipline. A key part of training your mind to respond instead of react is emotional discipline. Most of us don't realize how much our emotions influence our actions. We're often caught up in the moment, swept away by whatever is happening around us, and before we know it, we've said or done something we didn't fully intend. This is because we haven't developed the discipline to manage our emotions. Emotional discipline is about having control over how we feel and how we let those feelings shape our behavior. It's not about suppressing emotions or ignoring them. It's about recognizing them, understanding them, and then deciding how to act based on our values, not our impulses. When you think about emotional discipline, it might sound like something complicated or difficult, but in reality, it's simply the practice of training yourself to stop, reflect, and choose your responses. Just like any skill, it takes time and consistency. The more you practice emotional discipline, the easier it becomes to stay calm and composed, even in challenging situations. The first step in emotional discipline is awareness. You can't control something if you're not aware of it. So the first thing to do is start paying attention to how you react in different situations. When someone cuts you off in traffic, how do you respond? Do you feel anger immediately? Do you snap at your spouse when you're feeling stressed? Do you get defensive when someone gives you feedback at work? These reactions are all clues to your emotional triggers, the situations that provoke strong emotional responses. The more aware you are of your triggers, the better you can prepare yourself to manage them. Awareness helps you create a gap between what happens and how you respond. Most of the time, when we're emotionally triggered, we don't stop to think. We feel the emotion and then act on it without considering the consequences. But if you can develop awareness, you can notice the emotion as it arises. You'll catch yourself in the moment before reacting and give yourself the space to choose a different response. It's this small pause that allows you to practice emotional discipline and make a better decision. Once you become more aware of your emotions, the next step is to understand them. Emotions are signals. They're not inherently good or bad, they just tell you something about what's happening inside you. When you feel anger, frustration, sadness, or fear, your emotions are telling you that something is important. Maybe your boundaries were crossed, or maybe you're feeling overwhelmed by a situation. Understanding why you're feeling a certain way is crucial because it helps you understand the root cause of your emotional reaction. When you understand the emotion, you're less likely to let it take control of you. Instead, you can address it thoughtfully. For example, let's say you feel frustrated at work because a colleague is constantly interrupting you during meetings. When you feel that frustration, it's important to ask yourself why you feel that way. Is it because you feel disrespected? Are you worried that your ideas are being overlooked? Once you understand why you're frustrated, you can decide how to respond. You might choose to calmly express your feelings to your colleague, or you might decide that the best way to handle it is to be patient and wait for the right time to speak up. Understanding your emotions gives you the insight you need to make a choice that aligns with your values. The next step in emotional discipline is learning how to manage your emotions. This doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending they don't exist. It means finding healthy ways to express and channel your emotions. It's about acknowledging what you're feeling without letting those feelings dictate your actions. There are many techniques you can use to manage your emotions, and the key is finding what works best for you. Some people find that deep breathing helps them calm down when they're feeling anxious or angry. Others may find that journaling helps them process their emotions and gain clarity. Physical activity is another great way to release pent-up energy and frustration. Whatever method you choose, the goal is to create a routine that helps you stay in control of your emotions rather than letting them control you. Managing your emotions also means setting boundaries. Sometimes we feel overwhelmed or frustrated because we're not protecting our emotional space. We let people push us around, or we take on too many responsibilities, and as a result, we start to feel burned out. Emotional discipline is about recognizing when you need to set limits and take care of yourself. It's about saying no when you need to, and not feeling guilty for doing so. Setting boundaries allows you to conserve your emotional energy and avoid unnecessary stress. When you're clear about your limits, you're less likely to be triggered by other people's behavior. Another important aspect of emotional discipline is learning to embrace discomfort. Often, we react to situations because we want to avoid uncomfortable feelings. We don't want to feel vulnerable, sad, or anxious, so we push those feelings away, or we act out in ways that avoid dealing with them. However, emotional discipline teaches us that it's okay to feel discomfort. In fact, it's a natural part of life. Instead of reacting to avoid discomfort, emotional discipline encourages us to sit with it, process it, and learn from it. When we embrace discomfort, we learn resilience. We become stronger, and we develop the ability to face challenges without being knocked off course by our emotions. One of the most powerful tools in emotional discipline is self-compassion. Many times, we're our own worst critics. We beat ourselves up when we make a mistake or when we feel like we've failed. But self-compassion allows us to acknowledge that we are human and that we don't have to be perfect. It's about treating ourselves with kindness when things don't go as planned. When we practice self-compassion, we create a positive relationship with ourselves, which makes it easier to manage our emotions. Instead of feeling shame or guilt when we slip up, we can acknowledge that it's okay to be imperfect and that we can always try again. Developing emotional discipline also requires patience. We live in a world that thrives on instant gratification. We want things to happen quickly, and we want to feel better right away. But emotional discipline is a long-term process. It's about building habits that allow us to stay calm and composed over time. It's about practicing every day, even when we don't feel like it, and trusting that the effort will pay off in the end. Just like any skill, emotional discipline gets easier the more you practice it. With time, it becomes second nature, and you'll find yourself handling stress, conflict, and challenges with a sense of calm and control. A big part of emotional discipline is learning to let go of the need for external validation. So much of our emotional reactions come from trying to please others or seeking approval. When we feel criticized or misunderstood, we react defensively because we want to protect our self-image. But true emotional discipline comes from within. It's about learning to trust yourself and your own worth, without needing others to constantly affirm it. When you stop relying on others for validation, you gain the freedom to act from a place of self-assurance, not insecurity. Ultimately, emotional discipline is about self-mastery. It's about learning how to respond thoughtfully and intentionally instead of reacting impulsively. It's about developing the inner strength to face life's challenges with grace, and the wisdom to know that you have the power to choose how you handle each moment. The more you practice emotional discipline, the more you'll feel in control of your life. You'll find that you're able to respond with calm, clarity, and purpose, no matter what life throws your way. With emotional discipline, you'll not only be able to handle your emotions, you'll be able to use them to your advantage. Chapter 4. The Pause. Your most powerful tool. In the midst of everyday life, when things get overwhelming or stressful, we often feel like we have to act right away. Our minds race, our hearts pound, and we think that we need to react immediately to whatever is happening around us. The problem with this is that in those moments, we're not thinking clearly. Our emotions, like anger, fear, or frustration, take the wheel, and we act without fully processing what's happening. It's in those moments that we often regret what we said, did, or how we handled the situation. We act out of impulse, and the results are far from ideal. The key to overcoming this is the pause. It's that small moment of stillness before we act, that brief space where we can check in with ourselves and decide how we want to respond, rather than simply reacting. The pause is not something we often think about, but it's one of the most powerful tools we can develop to regain control over our emotions and actions. This simple act of pausing is where the power lies. It gives us the opportunity to slow down, think, and make a choice that is in line with who we want to be. Many people find that when they are in the heat of the moment, whether it's a stressful work situation or a disagreement with someone close to them, they feel pressure to act quickly. The urge is to speak, to defend, or to argue. But when you pause, you interrupt the automatic flow of thoughts and emotions. You stop the knee-jerk reaction from taking over, and you give yourself a chance to regain clarity. This moment of pause is where you reclaim control. It's where you can access the calm within you and decide how you want to handle the situation in a way that reflects your true self. In practice, the pause can take many forms. It could be as simple as taking a deep breath when you feel your emotions rising. It could be a moment of silence in a conversation, before you respond to something that's been said. Or it might be taking a brief break to step away from a situation that's getting too heated. Whatever it looks like, the pause is your opportunity to reset, to ground yourself, and to decide your next move with intention. It's in these moments that you choose to move from being a reactor to a responder. The beauty of the pause is that it doesn't require a lot of time. It's not about stopping everything and retreating into deep thought for an extended period. It's about taking a few seconds, just long enough to check in with yourself and recognize what's happening. In those few seconds, you can ask yourself questions like, how do I really feel right now? What do I want to achieve in this moment? What's the most effective way to handle this situation? The pause gives you the space to answer these questions thoughtfully, rather than letting your emotions control your actions. Taking a pause doesn't mean that you're ignoring the situation or avoiding the problem. In fact, the pause allows you to deal with the issue more effectively. It's easy to let emotions rule us in moments of conflict or stress, but when we pause, we can act from a place of strength and clarity. The pause helps you focus on the solution, not the emotion. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, you can choose to respond in a way that addresses the problem constructively. Think about a time when you were in a disagreement or a difficult situation and you felt yourself getting worked up. You may have felt your heart rate increase, your thoughts racing, and your body tense up. In those moments, it can feel nearly impossible to stay calm, and the natural impulse is to act or speak immediately. However, if you had paused just for a moment, you might have been able to stop the spiral of emotions. Instead of getting defensive or raising your voice, you could have stayed grounded, allowing yourself to reflect and make a conscious choice about how to respond. The more you practice this pause, the easier it becomes. With time, it becomes second nature to take a moment, breathe, and assess the situation before reacting. The pause creates a habit of mindfulness, helping you stay in control even when life feels chaotic. And once you make this pause a part of your daily life, you'll start noticing how much more in control you feel, how much more thoughtful and deliberate your responses become, and how much more effective your actions are. In a world that often demands quick answers, fast decisions, and immediate reactions, it can be hard to slow down. But slowing down is exactly what we need in order to respond in the best way possible. The pause allows us to connect with ourselves, to process what's going on, and to decide how to move forward in a way that reflects who we truly are. It's about taking control of your emotions, not letting them take control of you. And when you take that moment to pause, you are giving yourself the space to handle challenges with grace and intention, rather than being swept up in the rush of your emotions. Sometimes, taking the pause isn't just about slowing down your reactions, it's also about creating space for the other person. In conversations where emotions are running high, we often want to jump in with our own thoughts, to make sure we're heard or to defend ourselves, but the pause allows us to listen. It gives us the chance to truly hear what the other person is saying, to understand their perspective, and to respond with empathy rather than defensiveness. It allows us to approach the situation from a place of curiosity, not judgment. When you pause, you create room for both you and the other person to be heard, and that's when real communication happens. Of course, it's not always easy. There will be times when the emotions feel overwhelming, and it's hard to break the cycle. But the more you practice the pause, the more you'll recognize those moments when it's necessary. The pause is like a muscle, it gets stronger with use. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes to take that step back before responding. Over time, you'll find that you're able to handle stress and conflict with much more ease, making decisions that are calm, thoughtful, and effective. The pause isn't just a tool for moments of conflict or stress. It can also be used in situations where you simply need clarity. When faced with a big decision or uncertainty, taking a moment to pause and reflect allows you to process the situation before you act. It's easy to jump into things without thinking through the consequences, but the pause helps you avoid making rushed decisions. It gives you time to weigh your options, consider the potential outcomes, and make a choice that aligns with your long-term goals and values. The pause is more than just a break. It's a powerful tool for mindfulness. It gives you the opportunity to recenter yourself in the present moment. It helps you step out of the reactive mode and into a more intentional state of mind. In that space, you can choose to be calm, to be patient, to be kind. The pause is where you decide how to show up in the world. It's where you make the choice to be the person you want to be, not the person your emotions want you to be. In a fast-paced world where everything seems urgent, the pause might feel counterintuitive. But it's in those quiet moments of stillness that we regain our power. It's in those brief seconds that we find clarity. And it's in those pauses that we truly become the masters of our own responses. The next time you feel the urge to react, take a moment, breathe, and choose to respond with intention. That simple pause can change everything. Chapter 5. Rewiring your brain for calm responses. We are often caught in a cycle of automatic reactions. When something happens, we feel a certain way, and then we act based on that feeling. It's as though there's no space between the event and our response. This kind of behavior is natural. It's our mind working on autopilot, reacting to what it perceives as a threat or a challenge, based on years of learned responses. The problem is, when we live on autopilot, we stop thinking about why we react the way we do, or whether our response is the best one for the situation. To break this cycle, we need to rewire our brains. Rewiring doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent practice, we can train our minds to respond with more control and awareness. This process involves shifting from being reactive to being thoughtful and intentional in our responses. It's about learning to pause and creating space between stimulus and reaction. This change can be gradual, but the more we practice, the more natural it becomes to stay calm and make conscious choices in how we react. The first step in rewiring your brain is recognizing that your current patterns of reaction are not set in stone. Our brains are malleable. We often think that we're stuck with our habits, but the truth is, we can create new neural pathways that will support more positive and controlled responses. Just like any skill, learning how to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively requires consistent effort. It's like building a muscle. The more you work on it, the stronger it becomes. When you start practicing a more thoughtful response to your emotions, you're essentially training your brain to develop new habits. Your brain is constantly adjusting based on what you expose it to. If you regularly practice pausing before reacting, your brain will start to associate calmness with certain situations. Over time, that pause will become automatic, and your initial response to stress or conflict won't be anger, fear, or frustration. Instead, it will be a moment of clarity, where you can assess the situation and respond with intention. One of the most powerful tools for rewiring your brain is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment. It's about noticing what's happening in your mind and body without immediately reacting to it. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you develop the ability to be aware of your thoughts and emotions before they take over. This gives you the chance to respond with a clear mind rather than being swept up by your feelings. You don't have to change your emotions, you simply need to change how you engage with them. When you notice an emotional reaction arising, you can choose to observe it rather than act on it. The more you do this, the easier it becomes to make calm, measured decisions. Another way to help rewire your brain is by using positive reinforcement. Just like when you learn any new skill, you need to celebrate small successes. Every time you pause, instead of reacting impulsively, give yourself credit. It might seem small, but each time you make that conscious choice, you're building a new pathway in your brain. Over time, these small moments of self-control will accumulate and create a lasting shift in your behavior. When you notice your ability to respond with more clarity and less emotional reactivity, Acknowledge it. The more you reinforce those moments, the stronger the new pathways in your brain become. A key part of rewiring your brain is understanding that old patterns don't just disappear instantly. It's not about forcing yourself to react perfectly every time, but about creating a new default way of being. You will slip up, and that's part of the process. Old habits die hard, but with continued practice, they become less automatic. When you catch yourself reacting instead of responding, simply acknowledge it without judgment. Rather than criticizing yourself, use it as an opportunity to learn. Ask yourself, what triggered that reaction? How can I respond more thoughtfully next time? This mindset of curiosity and self-compassion will help you stay on track and keep improving over time. Rewiring your brain is not just about managing stress or handling conflicts better. It also affects how you approach life in general. When you practice taking a moment to reflect before reacting, you start approaching all situations more thoughtfully. You're not as easily thrown off balance by things that happen throughout your day. You begin to take things in stride, knowing that you have the ability to respond with intention no matter the situation. This sense of inner strength and calmness doesn't just impact stressful moments, it spreads throughout your entire life. The beauty of rewiring your brain is that the more you practice, the less effort it takes. At first, it may feel like a lot of work to slow down, to pause, and to make intentional choices in your responses. It may feel unnatural to stop yourself before reacting, especially if you're used to being on autopilot. But the more you practice, the more natural it will become. Eventually, you'll find that your first response to stress, conflict, or frustration is to pause and reflect, rather than to react impulsively. One of the most important aspects of rewiring your brain is setting up a foundation of patience. It's easy to expect quick results, but the process of creating lasting change takes time. When you feel like you're not making progress, remind yourself that every effort counts. Every time you pause and choose to respond thoughtfully, you are creating a new habit, no matter how small the moment may seem. Over time, these small changes will add up to something significant. The key is to stay patient with yourself and trust the process. Rewiring your brain is a marathon, not a sprint, but the rewards are well worth the effort. As you continue to practice rewiring your brain, you'll start to notice changes in your life. You'll find that you're able to stay calm in situations that would have previously thrown you off. You'll become more patient, more thoughtful, and more aware of how your emotions affect your actions. This awareness alone is powerful, as it gives you the ability to choose how you respond to the world around you, rather than letting the world dictate how you feel and act. Rewiring your brain is about reclaiming your power. It's about taking control of how you respond to life's challenges, instead of letting your emotions take control of you. When you make the decision to pause, reflect, and choose your response, you stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. And the more you practice this, the more your brain will naturally shift toward calmness, clarity, and emotional mastery. The process takes time, but with consistency, you will begin to see the world differently and respond with a level of awareness and control that was once beyond reach. Rewiring your brain is not just a way to handle stress, better it's a way to transform how you move through the world. Chapter 6. How to stay calm in the face of criticism. When someone criticizes us, it often feels personal. It can feel like a direct attack on who we are, especially when it touches on something we care about or are sensitive about. The immediate reaction is usually to defend ourselves, to protect our self-image, or to prove that we are right. Criticism, even when it's constructive, can stir up emotions. It's natural to feel defensive when someone points out a flaw or offers feedback on how we can do better. But the way we respond to criticism plays a huge role in how we grow and how we maintain healthy relationships with others. The challenge is learning to stay calm in the face of criticism, even when it feels uncomfortable or unfair. It's about understanding that criticism is not always a reflection of who you are as a person, but rather a reflection of how you can improve or how someone else sees things. It's about shifting from a defensive mindset to one of curiosity and growth. This shift can completely change the way you handle criticism and allow you to grow stronger and more resilient. When you're criticized, the first thing that often happens is that your emotions are triggered. You feel a sense of vulnerability, and your natural response is to protect yourself. This is a completely human reaction. But what happens when you pause before reacting? What happens when, instead of jumping into defense mode, you take a step back and really listen to what's being said? This is the first step in learning how to handle criticism without letting it affect your peace of mind. Taking a moment to pause is crucial when it comes to criticism. It gives you the space to think before responding. When you react immediately, you're often doing so based on emotion. You might not fully understand the feedback or might misinterpret it as an attack. But when you pause, you have the opportunity to process what's being said, understand the intention behind the criticism, and decide how to respond in a way that is thoughtful and productive. The pause doesn't mean you're ignoring the criticism or avoiding it. It simply gives you the mental clarity to deal with it in a way that doesn't damage your self-esteem or your relationships. It's also important to recognize that criticism is not always about you as a person. It's easy to take things personally, especially when we are attached to the outcome of our actions. But most of the time, criticism is simply feedback on a specific action, behavior, or result. It's not a judgment of who you are or your worth. Understanding this distinction can help you separate yourself from the criticism. It allows you to step back and see it for what it is, an opportunity for growth and improvement, not an attack on your identity. One of the best ways to handle criticism is to ask for clarification. When someone offers feedback, instead of getting defensive, try to ask questions. Can you explain what you mean by that? Or, how can I improve in this area? These questions show that you're open to learning and growing from the feedback. It shifts the focus from defensiveness to a more constructive conversation. Asking for clarification also gives you a clearer understanding of what the person is really saying, which can help you respond with more insight and less emotional charge. It's also helpful to reframe the situation. Instead of seeing criticism as something negative or as a threat, think of it as an opportunity to improve. Everyone has room for growth, and constructive criticism is a tool that can help you become better at what you do. Whether it's at work, in your personal life, or in any other area, the ability to take feedback and use it to improve is a sign of emotional maturity and resilience. When you see criticism as a gift rather than a personal attack, it becomes easier to stay calm and use the feedback in a way that benefits you. Remember, criticism doesn't always come from a place of malice. People often offer feedback because they want to help you succeed, or because they feel it's important to address something. Understanding the intention behind the criticism can help you take it in stride. It's not always about you personally. It's about the situation, the action, or the outcome that needs attention. This realization allows you to separate your emotions from the criticism and deal with it more rationally. Another key part of handling criticism is maintaining your self-esteem. It's easy to let criticism make you doubt yourself, but your self-worth is not tied to someone else's opinion of you. Instead of letting criticism erode your confidence, use it as an opportunity to build resilience. When you can take criticism without letting it shake your belief in yourself, you demonstrate strength and maturity. You can acknowledge the feedback, use it to improve, and still feel good about who you are and what you bring to the table. In order to handle criticism gracefully, you need to practice self-compassion. No one is perfect, and we all make mistakes. When someone offers you feedback, be kind to yourself. Understand that it's okay to make mistakes and that criticism is a part of the process of getting better. Rather than beating yourself up or feeling ashamed, allow yourself to learn and grow from the experience. This mindset shift takes time, but with practice, it becomes easier to take feedback without it affecting your self-worth. It's also important to remember that criticism can be a valuable tool for building stronger relationships. When you handle criticism well, you show that you're open to communication, growth, and self-improvement. This not only improves your ability to work with others, but it also builds trust and respect. People will appreciate your ability to take feedback in stride and your willingness to learn. In turn, this strengthens your relationships and helps you create a more positive and supportive environment. When criticism comes your way, take a moment to ask yourself what you can learn from the situation. What part of the feedback is useful to you? How can you apply it to improve? By focusing on the learning aspect, you can turn a potentially negative experience into a positive one. Criticism doesn't have to feel like a personal attack if you approach it with the right mindset. Instead, it can be an opportunity to grow, learn, and become better at what you do. At the end of the day, the way you handle criticism says a lot about you. When you can take it without reacting defensively, it shows strength and maturity. When you approach criticism with an open mind and a willingness to improve, you are demonstrating emotional intelligence. You're showing that you can handle challenges without letting them derail your progress. Criticism doesn't have to be something that knocks you down. Instead, it can be the very thing that pushes you forward, helping you become the best version of yourself. Chapter 7. Mastering Self. Control in Stressful Moments. In moments of stress, it's easy to feel like you're losing control. Whether it's a sudden issue at work, a personal challenge, or an unexpected setback, stress has a way of making everything seem bigger than it actually is. When we're under pressure, it's natural to want to react quickly, to fix things right away. But often, those quick reactions are fueled by emotion, not logic, and they tend to make the situation worse instead of better. It's in those stressful moments that learning how to stay calm becomes most crucial. When you can manage your stress effectively, you regain control, think more clearly, and make better decisions. Stress isn't something we can avoid completely. It's a part of life, and it's normal to feel anxious or overwhelmed from time to time. But how you manage that stress determines how well you can navigate life's challenges. The difference between feeling controlled by stress and handling it with calmness is your ability to manage your emotions in the moment. When you feel overwhelmed, taking a step back and creating space for a calm response can change everything. One of the most important things to recognize when dealing with stress is that it's not the external situation causing your reaction, but rather how you interpret it. The way you perceive a stressful situation can significantly impact how you feel. For example, if you look at a problem as something insurmountable, you'll likely feel helpless or defeated. On the other hand, if you view it as a challenge, you may feel more empowered and ready to find a solution. The difference in perception is key. The ability to shift your perspective, to see a stressful situation from a more constructive angle, helps you stay calm and focused. When stress hits, it's easy to let emotions take over. Maybe your heart starts racing, or your thoughts start spinning, making it difficult to focus. This is where the pause becomes crucial. It's in these moments that you need to slow down, take a breath, and create that small space between the event and your reaction. The pause gives you a moment to reflect, to decide how you want to respond, and to break free from the automatic emotional response that stress often triggers. When you feel your stress levels rising, start by focusing on your breath. Deep, slow breaths are a simple but powerful way to calm your nervous system. When you breathe deeply, you send a signal to your brain that everything is okay, that there's no need for panic. Focusing on your breath also helps shift your attention away from the problem at hand, giving you the mental space to collect your thoughts and consider your next move. By making deep breathing a habit in stressful situations, you train your mind and body to respond with calmness instead of panic. Another powerful tool for managing stress is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of staying present in the moment, without judgment. When we're stressed, our minds often race ahead, worrying about the future or rehashing the past. But mindfulness helps you focus on the here and now. It's about paying attention to what's happening around you without getting caught up in the emotions or the what-if thoughts that often accompany stress. By practicing mindfulness, you can break the cycle of worry and regain a sense of calm. It's important to remember that stress doesn't last forever. In fact, it's often our resistance to stress that makes it feel more overwhelming. When we fight against stress, we create more tension in our bodies and minds. But when we accept that stress is a normal part of life, it loses its power over us. This doesn't mean we should just give up or ignore the stress, but rather that we should allow ourselves to experience it without judgment. Acceptance allows you to acknowledge the stress, understand its cause, and then move forward without letting it control you. A big part of managing stress is recognizing when it's time to step away. Sometimes, when we're in the middle of a stressful situation, we feel like we have to keep pushing through, like we have to keep working, keep solving the problem, but that's not always the best approach. In fact, continuing to push through without taking a break can lead to burnout. Giving yourself permission to take a step back, even if it's just for a few minutes, can help reset your mind and body. During that break, you can use techniques like deep breathing, stretching, or going for a short walk to relieve tension and clear your mind. In moments of intense stress, it can also help to remind yourself that not everything is as urgent as it seems in the moment. Often, when we're stressed, we believe that everything needs to be fixed immediately. But rarely is that the case. Sometimes, taking a moment to assess the situation and realize that you don't need to solve everything right away can help you stay calm. By breaking down the situation into smaller, more manageable pieces, you can approach it with a clearer, more focused mindset. This shift from urgency to perspective helps take the pressure off, allowing you to respond calmly and effectively. Learning how to manage stress also means taking care of yourself physically. Stress has a way of creeping into our bodies, manifesting as tension, headaches, or fatigue. One of the best ways to combat this is by taking care of your physical health. Regular exercise, a balanced diet, and adequate sleep can make a significant difference in how your body handles stress. Exercise, in particular, is a powerful stress reliever. It releases endorphins, which are natural mood boosters, and it helps regulate your body's stress response. Even a short walk can have a noticeable impact on how you feel. Equally important is creating space for relaxation. In a world that's constantly demanding more of our time and energy, it's essential to make time for rest. Relaxation techniques like meditation, yoga, or simply taking time to read or enjoy a hobby can help you recharge and release built-up tension. By incorporating relaxation into your daily routine, you strengthen your ability to stay calm in stressful situations, knowing that you're giving yourself the time and space to recover. The key to handling stress is building resilience. Resilience is the ability to bounce back from challenges, to stay grounded in difficult situations, and to keep going even when things don't go according to plan. Resilience doesn't come from avoiding stress, but from learning how to handle it in a healthy way. It comes from practicing mindfulness, taking care of your body, and developing the mental habits that allow you to stay calm and focused under pressure. Over time, as you become more comfortable with managing stress, you'll find that it no longer has the same hold on you. You'll be able to face challenges with a sense of confidence and calmness, knowing that you have the tools to navigate whatever comes your way. The more you practice these techniques, the more natural they become, and the less stressed you'll feel in your everyday life. Ultimately, stress is something that's always going to be a part of life. It's impossible to avoid it completely, and trying to do so can lead to more stress in itself. But by learning how to manage your stress, you give yourself the power to handle life's challenges with grace. Stress doesn't have to control you. When you can stay calm in the face of stress, you become the one in control. It's this kind of calm strength that helps you navigate the ups and downs of life, and it's the key to responding, not reacting, to whatever comes your way. Chapter 8. Dealing with difficult people without losing your cool. Dealing with difficult people is one of the most challenging aspects of navigating life. Whether it's a colleague who is constantly negative, a friend who is difficult to communicate with, or a family member who never seems to understand your perspective, difficult people can test our patience, our composure, and sometimes even our very sense of self. They often trigger strong emotional reactions, and when we don't know how to manage those emotions, the situation can escalate quickly. But handling difficult people doesn't have to be as draining or frustrating as it may seem. The key to dealing with challenging individuals lies in your ability to stay calm, to respond rather than react, and to manage your emotions in a way that serves both you and the situation. The first step in dealing with difficult people is recognizing that you cannot control others. No matter how much you try to influence their behavior or change their perspective, you have no power over their actions or their mindset. This realization can be liberating because it allows you to focus on what you can control: your own response. When we try to control or fix someone else's behavior, we often end up frustrated and exhausted. But when we accept that we can only control how we react to them, we free ourselves from the emotional weight of trying to manage the unmanageable. One of the biggest challenges when dealing with difficult people is not letting their behavior trigger an emotional response in us. It's easy to get caught up in their negativity or frustration and mirror it with our own defensiveness or anger. But when we allow ourselves to be pulled into their emotional state, we lose our power. Instead, we have to practice emotional detachment. This doesn't mean that we don't care about the situation or the person, but rather that we choose not to let their behavior dictate how we feel. By maintaining emotional detachment, we stay grounded and can make more thoughtful decisions about how to respond. A key to emotional detachment is recognizing that their behavior is a reflection of them, not of you. People act based on their own experiences, emotions, and struggles. When someone is rude, angry, or dismissive, it's often more about what they're dealing with internally than it is about you personally. Understanding this can help you depersonalize the situation and not take their behavior to heart. When you realize that their actions are not a reflection of your worth or your abilities, it becomes much easier to stay calm and focused. It allows you to step back from the emotional charge of the situation and respond in a way that is more measured and thoughtful. Another way to handle difficult people is by setting boundaries. Boundaries are essential for protecting your emotional well-being and ensuring that you don't get caught in unhealthy patterns of behavior. When someone is being difficult, it's important to communicate what is and isn't acceptable in a way that is clear and respectful. Setting boundaries doesn't mean being aggressive or confrontational. It simply means asserting yourself in a calm and confident manner. For example, if a colleague is interrupting you during meetings, you can calmly say, "I'd like to finish my point before we move on. I'd appreciate it if you could let me finish." By setting boundaries, you take control of the situation and prevent yourself from being dragged into unnecessary conflict. When dealing with difficult people, it's also important to practice active listening. It's easy to get defensive or tune out when someone is being difficult, but taking the time to truly listen can make a huge difference in how the situation unfolds. Active listening means focusing on what the person is saying without interrupting or preparing your response in your head. It means showing empathy and trying to understand where they're coming from. Sometimes, just being heard can diffuse a tense situation, and when you actively listen, you create an opportunity for better communication. It also helps you gain a clearer understanding of what's driving the other person's behavior, which can help you respond more effectively. However, listening doesn't mean you have to agree with them or accept poor behavior. It simply means acknowledging their perspective before offering your own. When you listen actively, you demonstrate respect, which often leads to more respectful interactions. Even if the person continues to be difficult, you'll find that your ability to stay calm and listen helps you maintain control of the situation, while also creating a space for more productive communication. A powerful tool in dealing with difficult people is choosing your words carefully. It's easy to react impulsively in a tense conversation, but that usually leads to more conflict. Instead, take a moment to think before you speak. Responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively helps prevent the situation from escalating. Sometimes, the most effective response is to remain silent or to simply acknowledge the other person's feelings without agreeing with them. For example, if someone is criticizing you unfairly, instead of defending yourself immediately, you could say, "I hear what you're saying. Let me think about that," which creates space for you to process the situation before responding. Another important aspect of dealing with difficult people is recognizing when it's time to walk away. Some people thrive on conflict, and no matter how calm or reasonable you try to be, they may continue to provoke you. In these situations, it's essential to recognize when continuing the conversation is unproductive. If someone is being unreasonable or overly aggressive, sometimes the best choice is to disengage. Walking away doesn't mean you're giving up, it means you're choosing to preserve your peace. It also sets a clear boundary that you won't engage in toxic or unproductive conversations. There's no shame in removing yourself from a situation that is causing you emotional harm. In fact, it's an act of self-care. Dealing with difficult people can also involve practicing patience. Not everyone operates at the same speed or communicates in the same way. Some people may need more time to process information, while others may need space to cool down. If someone is being difficult because they're overwhelmed or stressed, giving them some time and space to gather their thoughts can help de-escalate the situation. Similarly, if you're the one who feels frustrated or impatient, taking a step back and allowing yourself time to reset can help you approach the situation with more calmness and clarity. It's also important to remember that not every difficult person is worth your emotional investment. Some people may simply not be open to change or to hearing your perspective. In these cases, it's crucial to evaluate whether continuing to engage with them is in your best interest. Sometimes the best way to deal with a difficult person is to limit your exposure to them or to walk away from the relationship altogether. This doesn't mean you're giving up, but rather that you're choosing to prioritize your emotional health. Handling difficult people with grace requires practice and self-awareness. The more you practice staying calm, setting boundaries, listening actively, and choosing your responses thoughtfully, the easier it becomes. It's not about changing the other person, but about taking responsibility for how you respond. When you learn how to handle difficult people calmly and effectively, you maintain your peace and protect your well-being, while also creating the space for healthier, more respectful relationships. Chapter 9. Responding with logic, not emotion. In life, we often find ourselves in situations where our emotions feel like they're taking over. It could be a stressful moment at work, a disagreement with a loved one, or even something as small as a frustrating experience at the store. In these moments, it's easy to let our feelings control our actions, and before we know it, we've said something we didn't mean or made a decision we regret. It's in these moments that we need to remind ourselves of a simple but powerful truth. We have the ability to choose how we respond, and that choice comes from thinking logically rather than reacting emotionally. When emotions take over, we often lose sight of what really matters. Instead of thinking about the situation from a clear, rational perspective, we get caught up in the heat of the moment. But the key to mastering our emotional responses is learning to pause and bring logic into the equation. This doesn't mean ignoring our feelings or pretending they don't exist. It means acknowledging them, understanding them, and then making decisions based on reason rather than impulse. It's easy to think that our emotions are always justified, especially when we feel hurt, angry, or upset. But emotions can cloud our judgment. They can make us react in ways that are not helpful or productive. For example, when we're angry, We might say something hurtful to someone we care about, only to regret it later. When we're anxious, we might make a hasty decision without fully considering the consequences. These emotional reactions can create unnecessary conflict or lead us down a path we didn't want to take. When we start to practice responding logically, we gain a sense of control over our emotions. We begin to recognize that emotions are temporary and don't have to dictate how we behave. Instead of allowing ourselves to be swept up in a wave of anger or fear, we pause and ask ourselves, what's the best way to handle this situation? By taking a step back and thinking logically, we can make better decisions, solve problems more effectively, and maintain healthier relationships with others. This shift from emotional reactions to logical responses takes practice. It's easy to fall into old patterns of reacting automatically, especially in situations that are familiar or particularly stressful. But the more we practice responding with logic, the easier it becomes. It starts with being mindful of our emotional triggers and taking a moment to pause before acting. When we feel ourselves getting caught up in an emotional reaction, we can ask ourselves, what would the best version of me do right now? This simple question helps us shift from an emotional response to one that is more thoughtful and rational. One of the most important aspects of responding with logic is understanding the situation as clearly as possible. When we're emotional, our perception of the situation can become distorted. We may assume things that aren't true or jump to conclusions based on our feelings. For example, if a colleague offers constructive feedback, we might interpret it as criticism, even if they're just trying to help. If we're upset with a friend, we might assume that they don't care about us, when in reality they're just busy or distracted. By taking a step back and considering the facts, we can avoid making assumptions and respond in a more rational way. It's also helpful to remember that, in most cases, we're not the only one involved in the situation. When we respond logically, we take into account not just our own emotions, but also the perspective of the other person. This doesn't mean we have to agree with them, but it helps us see the bigger picture. If someone is angry or upset with us, it's easy to take it personally. But when we think logically, we can consider their feelings and why they might be reacting that way. This understanding allows us to respond with empathy and avoid escalating the situation. In addition to staying calm and logical, it's important to focus on finding solutions. Emotions often lead us to focus on the problem, to dwell on what's wrong or who's at fault. But when we respond logically, we shift our focus to solutions. Instead of getting caught up in blame or frustration, we think about what we can do to resolve the issue at hand. This mindset not only helps us stay calm, but it also helps us move forward. It gives us a sense of control over the situation and empowers us to take action in a way that leads to a positive outcome. Responding logically also means that we don't act impulsively. It's easy to want to fix things right away, especially when we're feeling pressure or anxiety. But sometimes, the best course of action is to wait. Taking time to think things through, to weigh the pros and cons, and to consider all the possible outcomes can help us make more informed decisions. It's not about delaying action for the sake of it, but rather about taking a moment to ensure that we're making the right choice. One of the key benefits of responding logically is that it helps us maintain our emotional balance. When we act impulsively, we often create more stress for ourselves. We might make a decision that we regret or create conflict that could have been avoided. But when we respond thoughtfully, we avoid unnecessary drama and create a sense of peace in our own minds. This peace allows us to stay focused on what really matters and to approach challenges with clarity and confidence. It's also important to recognize that responding logically doesn't mean suppressing emotions. It means understanding them and choosing how to deal with them in a healthy way. Emotions are valid, and they serve a purpose. They tell us when something is important or when we need to pay attention to something. But emotions shouldn't be the driving force behind our actions. By responding with logic, we give ourselves the opportunity to process our emotions, understand them, and then decide how to move forward in a way that aligns with our values. Over time, the more we practice responding logically, the easier it becomes to handle even the most stressful situations. We build resilience, and our ability to think clearly under pressure improves. We become more effective at managing our emotions, and as a result, we navigate life's challenges with more grace and confidence. We don't let the ups and downs of life dictate how we feel or how we react. Instead, we take charge of our own responses, knowing that logic and reason can guide us through any situation. As you begin to incorporate logical responses into your daily life, remember that this is a skill that takes time to develop. There will be moments when emotions get the best of you, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. The more you practice pausing before reacting, considering the facts, and focusing on solutions, the more natural it will feel. Over time, you'll find that your first instinct is to respond with clarity and intention, rather than being swept up in the rush of emotion. This shift is one of the most powerful ways to take control of your life and create the outcomes you desire. Chapter 10. How to stop overreacting to small problems. There are moments in life when everything feels like it's spiraling out of control. It's easy to get caught up in the small stuff, the little things that go wrong during the day that start piling up, making it seem like the whole world is against you. In these moments, it can feel overwhelming. Small inconveniences feel like major problems, and the smallest mistakes can seem catastrophic. But in reality, these moments are often less significant than they appear in the heat of the moment. The key to moving past these minor frustrations is learning how to stop overreacting to small problems. Overreaction is a common habit. When something doesn't go as planned or when something annoys us, it's tempting to blow it out of proportion. We get angry, frustrated, or anxious, and we let that emotional response dictate how we handle the situation. But the more we react in this way, the more we strengthen that habit. Over time, it becomes the default response to anything that goes wrong, no matter how small. The good news is that by recognizing this tendency and practicing self-control, we can learn to stop overreacting and deal with life's inevitable annoyances more effectively. The first step is recognizing when you're overreacting. Sometimes it's hard to tell, especially when you're caught up in the heat of the moment. But overreaction usually comes with a sense of urgency or panic that doesn't match the severity of the situation. For example, if you spill a drink or lose your keys, it might feel like the end of the world at the time, but it's not. These things happen to everyone, and getting upset over them only adds unnecessary stress to your day. By learning to step back and assess the situation calmly, you can quickly realize that the problem is much smaller than it initially seems. One of the most effective ways to stop overreacting is to take a breath. When you feel yourself getting worked up over something small, pause and take a deep breath. This simple action can help reset your brain, shifting it from a state of panic to one of calmness. Breathing deeply helps your body relax, and it gives you the space to collect your thoughts before you act. Instead of responding out of frustration or anger, you can choose to handle the situation with a clear mind. It's also important to ask yourself, is this really worth getting upset over? Most of the time, the answer will be no. The drink spill, the forgotten appointment, the unexpected traffic jam, they're all temporary inconveniences. While it's natural to feel irritated by these things, reacting emotionally only prolongs the frustration and makes it harder to move on. When you put things in perspective and realize how minor the issue is in the grand scheme of things, you can start to let go of the emotional reaction and respond more calmly. Another helpful strategy is to focus on what you can control rather than what you can't. Small problems often make us feel helpless, like we're at the mercy of external circumstances. But the truth is, we always have control over how we respond. If you're stuck in traffic, you can't control the cars in front of you, but you can control how you choose to use that time. Maybe it's a chance to listen to a podcast, or simply take a few moments to relax and clear your mind. Focusing on what you can do in the moment helps you regain a sense of control, which reduces the tendency to overreact. Humor is another great tool when dealing with minor frustrations. Often, when we step back and look at the situation with a sense of humor, we realize how trivial it really is. A flat tire, a missed deadline, or a delayed train might feel like major problems in the moment, but when we add a little humor into the mix, we can see them for what they really are: temporary, manageable challenges. Laughing at the small things helps us not take them too seriously, and it creates a sense of lightness that makes it easier to move on. It's also worth remembering that overreaction doesn't just affect you, can affect the people around you as well. When you overreact to something small, it can create tension or discomfort in your relationships. If you're constantly reacting with frustration or anger to every little problem, it can become exhausting for others too. By learning to manage your responses, you not only improve your own mental state, but also create a more positive environment for the people around you. Of course, it's natural to have moments of frustration or irritation. It's part of being human. But the key is learning to manage those moments in a way that doesn't disrupt your peace or cause unnecessary stress. When you stop overreacting, you free yourself from the emotional roller coaster that comes with constantly being upset about small problems. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by everything that goes wrong, you can focus on the bigger picture and move through life with more ease and calm. One of the most powerful ways to stop overreacting is by practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present in the moment, without judgment. When you're mindful, you're not caught up in your thoughts or emotions. You're aware of what's happening around you, but you don't let it dictate how you feel. By practicing mindfulness, you can train your mind to stay calm and focused, even in the face of minor annoyances. When you're mindful, you recognize that things like spilled coffee or missed trains are just temporary interruptions, not crises that require an emotional outburst. It's also helpful to create a mental checklist for when you feel yourself starting to overreact. When something small happens that triggers frustration, ask yourself, is this really a big deal? What can I do to fix this? What's the best way to handle this calmly? Having these questions in mind will help you pause before reacting and remind you that most problems can be solved without drama or unnecessary emotion. Over time, as you practice managing small frustrations, you'll start to notice a shift in how you respond to life's challenges. What once would have been a major annoyance now feels like just another part of the day. You'll find that your emotional reactions become more balanced, and you'll have a greater sense of control over your responses. Instead of getting bogged down by minor inconveniences, you'll move through life with a calm sense of clarity, knowing that the small stuff doesn't have to get in the way of your peace. The goal isn't to become immune to frustration or to suppress your emotions, but to recognize when something isn't worth getting upset over and to handle it with a calm, clear mind. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes to let go of the little things and focus on what truly matters. When you stop overreacting, you give yourself the freedom to experience life in a more balanced and peaceful way. Chapter 11. The Role of Patience in Mental Strength. Patience is one of the most underrated qualities in today's fast-paced world. It seems like everything is moving at lightning speed: deadlines to meet, places to go, things to do. We are constantly pushed to keep up. In this environment, patience can feel like a luxury. We want results quickly, and when things don't happen on our timeline, we can easily become frustrated. But the reality is, patience is not just about waiting without complaint. It's about maintaining your inner peace and keeping a calm perspective, even when things aren't unfolding as quickly as you'd like. Patience requires a shift in mindset. Instead of seeing delays and challenges as roadblocks, you begin to view them as part of the process. When something takes longer than expected or doesn't go as planned, it's easy to feel anxious or upset. We often think that if things don't happen fast enough, they'll never happen at all. But when you embrace patience, you accept that things unfold in their own time, and that rushing only leads to mistakes, stress, and exhaustion. Patience allows you to move through life with a sense of calm, knowing that in time things will work out. The first step in developing patience is learning to be okay with discomfort. We're conditioned to want things instantly, and when we don't get them, we can become restless. We check our phones every few minutes, we pace around, and we grow frustrated when things don't move at the speed we want them to. But this impatience often does more harm than good. When we allow ourselves to sit with discomfort, we stop looking for ways to escape it. Instead, we learn to tolerate the uncertainty, knowing that everything doesn't have to be resolved right away. This doesn't mean that we should stop working toward our goals, or that we should sit idly by while waiting for things to happen. Patience is about accepting the process, not ignoring the work that needs to be done. It's about recognizing that there are natural rhythms to life, and sometimes we need to slow down and let things unfold in their own time. The key to patience is balancing action with acceptance. You take the necessary steps toward your goals, but you don't force outcomes. You allow space for things to progress without trying to control every detail. One of the most powerful ways to cultivate patience is to practice mindfulness. When you're mindful, you are fully present in the moment, without rushing to get to the next thing. In a world where we are constantly multitasking and thinking about what's coming next, mindfulness helps us focus on the here and now. Instead of worrying about how much time is passing or how long something will take, mindfulness helps you stay grounded and connected to the task at hand. You start to realize that time isn't an enemy to be battled, but something to be embraced. When you allow yourself to experience the present moment fully, you begin to release the tension that comes from wanting everything to happen faster. Another aspect of patience is learning to manage expectations. We often expect things to happen immediately or to go according to plan, but life rarely unfolds in a straight line. Delays, obstacles, and unexpected detours are part of the journey. When we expect everything to happen quickly, we set ourselves up for frustration and disappointment when things don't go as planned. By managing our expectations and accepting that things might take time, we create more room for patience. When we don't hold on so tightly to our desired timeline, we're able to move forward with less stress and more ease. Patience also involves trusting the process. There are times when we can't control the outcome, and there's nothing we can do to speed up the result. We might be waiting for a promotion, for a project to come together, or for a relationship to deepen. In these moments, patience isn't about sitting back and doing nothing. It's about trusting that, in time, things will fall into place. You do your part, you put in the effort, and you trust that the right opportunities will come at the right time. Instead of fixating on the end result, you focus on what you can control in the present moment, knowing that patience will bring the right outcome. It's easy to think that being patient means doing nothing, but patience actually requires active effort. It requires you to be disciplined in managing your emotions, to stay focused on the task at hand, and to accept that things take time. It requires you to resist the temptation to rush, to force things, or to push for instant gratification. This effort to stay grounded in the present moment, to not get swept away by impatience or frustration, is what ultimately leads to growth. When you practice patience, you give yourself the space to make better decisions, avoid mistakes, and maintain a sense of peace even when things aren't going according to your plan. One of the biggest challenges of patience is the need to delay gratification. We're conditioned to want things now, but true patience involves waiting for the right time. When you are patient, you acknowledge that what you want may take time to come to fruition, but that the wait will be worth it. This shift in thinking allows you to focus on the journey, not just the destination. Patience helps you appreciate the small steps along the way, rather than constantly feeling like you need to hurry to the end. Every moment of waiting is an opportunity for growth, reflection, and learning. It's also important to remember that patience doesn't mean being passive. It's easy to mistake patience for passivity, but they are two very different things. Being passive means not engaging with life or taking action when necessary. Patience, on the other hand, is about taking the right actions while accepting that results take time. Patience is not about waiting around for things to happen. It's about doing the work, staying engaged, and trusting that the outcome will come in its own time. As you practice patience, you will find that it brings a sense of calm and clarity to your life. Instead of rushing from one thing to the next, you will start to savor the process. You will begin to recognize that the journey is just as important as the destination, and that the challenges along the way are opportunities to learn and grow. With patience, you become more resilient, more focused, and more capable of handling whatever life throws your way. Patience doesn't just help you navigate the tough times, it also helps you enjoy the good times, because when you are patient, you are more present and more able to appreciate the small moments that make life truly meaningful. The journey to patience isn't always easy, and it takes time. But as you begin to embrace the process and recognize that good things take time, you will find that patience becomes a natural part of who you are. It will give you the ability to handle setbacks, delays, and challenges without losing your peace. When you learn to embrace patience, you open the door to a more fulfilling and peaceful life. It's not about rushing to get to the end, it's about embracing every step along the way. Chapter 12. Responding like a leader, not a victim. There's a certain power in knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. In a world that often rewards loud voices and bold statements, the idea of silence can sometimes feel like a weakness. Yet, true strength often lies in restraint. Choosing silence, especially in moments of tension, conflict, or stress, can be one of the most powerful tools in your emotional toolkit. It's not about shutting down or avoiding difficult conversations. It's about giving yourself the space to respond thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively. The ability to know when silence is the right choice is an art that can transform not only how you manage conflicts, but how you interact with the world in general. In many situations, we are conditioned to think that we need to have an answer, to offer an opinion, or to fill the silence with words. There's pressure to speak up, to make our voices heard, to share our thoughts in order to feel validated. But sometimes the most powerful response is simply to be quiet. Silence creates space for understanding, reflection, and growth. It allows you to step back from the immediate impulse to speak and to instead consider what is truly needed in the moment. When faced with criticism or conflict, it's natural to want to defend yourself, to explain your side of the story, or to justify your actions. But often, this can escalate the situation rather than resolve it. By remaining silent, you're not ignoring the problem or avoiding confrontation. Instead, you're giving yourself the time to process the situation. You're choosing not to react emotionally or defensively, but instead to respond with clarity. In the heat of the moment, speaking too quickly can lead to miscommunication, hurt feelings, or even further conflict. By allowing yourself the space to pause, you can think more clearly and decide the best course of action. Silence can also be an expression of strength. It shows that you are not controlled by your emotions, but instead, you are in command of them. When someone says something provocative or insulting, it's easy to feel the urge to respond with a quick retort or rebuttal. But by choosing silence, you are showing that their words do not define you. You don't need to react to everything that is said to you. Instead, you can hold your peace, knowing that your worth is not determined by how others try to provoke you. This act of restraint is a powerful way to protect your emotional well-being, to maintain your inner calm, and to prevent unnecessary conflict. Silence can also be a way to create space for others. In conversations, we often feel the need to talk over one another, to make our point or to convince the other person of our perspective. But silence allows others to be heard. It gives them the space to share their thoughts without interruption or judgment. When you choose silence in these moments, you are not just allowing the other person to speak, you are showing respect for their point of view. You are creating a safe environment where true dialogue can take place, where ideas can be exchanged without the pressure to respond immediately. Sometimes, silence is the best way to demonstrate that you are listening. When someone is upset or emotional, they may not need a response right away. They may simply need to express their feelings and know that they are being heard. In these moments, offering silence, a listening ear, or a gentle presence can be far more powerful than any words you might say. Listening without interrupting, without rushing to solve the problem, allows the other person to feel understood. It's an act of empathy and support that often speaks louder than any advice or solution you could offer. Choosing silence doesn't mean that you are passive or indifferent. On the contrary, it's an active decision to refrain from speaking until you are sure that your words will have a positive impact. It's a choice to pause before you react, to ensure that your response is thoughtful and intentional. It's about being mindful of the power of your words and understanding that sometimes silence is the most effective way to create peace and clarity. There are moments, however, when silence can be misunderstood. People may assume that you are disengaged or uninterested, or they might pressure you to speak when you're not ready. In these situations, it's important to communicate the reason for your silence without feeling the need to justify it. You can simply explain that you are taking time to think or that you need a moment to process. Most people will respect this if you communicate it with calmness and confidence. Silence doesn't have to be a negative or uncomfortable thing. It can be a deliberate and powerful choice that helps you maintain control over your emotions and your responses. There are also times when silence can be used as a way to diffuse tension. In difficult situations or heated discussions, words can often make things worse. By staying quiet, you prevent yourself from saying something you might regret. In some cases, silence can act as a cooling mechanism, allowing the other person to reflect and reconsider their words or actions. It's a subtle but powerful way to shift the energy in a conversation without escalating conflict. Learning to embrace silence doesn't mean avoiding difficult conversations or shutting down when things get tough. Instead, it means choosing to speak only when your words will contribute to the situation in a meaningful way. It means resisting the urge to speak out of frustration, defensiveness, or the desire to be heard. Instead, you allow yourself to be intentional in your responses, knowing that not every moment requires an immediate answer. One of the most profound aspects of silence is its ability to foster self-awareness. When we're not constantly speaking, we have the space to reflect on our thoughts, our feelings, and our motivations. We begin to understand ourselves more deeply, and we gain clarity on what we truly believe and what we truly want to communicate. In a world that constantly demands our attention and our words, silence gives us the opportunity to reconnect with ourselves, to evaluate our priorities, and to find peace within. Choosing silence is a sign of emotional maturity. It's the ability to step back from the immediate urge to react, to give yourself the time to think before speaking. It's a practice that not only helps you respond with greater wisdom, but also protects your emotional energy. It's a choice that empowers you to navigate relationships, conflicts, and challenges with grace, clarity, and confidence. When you understand the value of silence, you'll find that you don't need to speak all the time to make an impact. Your actions, your presence, and the words you choose to say will carry far more weight when they come from a place of intention and calm. Chapter 13. Controlling your response in arguments and conflicts. It's easy to get caught up in the heat of an argument. When emotions run high, our instincts often take over. In a split second, we may feel the urge to defend ourselves, to assert our point of view, or to win the conversation. But in the middle of a disagreement, that immediate reaction can lead to conflict rather than resolution. The key to handling arguments and conflicts effectively is learning how to control your responses and, when necessary, how to pause before reacting. The first step in managing arguments is recognizing that not every conflict needs to be resolved immediately. Sometimes the best thing you can do is simply stay calm and listen. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of speaking over each other, trying to make your point more forcefully than the other person. But this rarely leads to understanding. In fact, it often drives a wedge between people, creating more tension than resolution. Instead, taking a step back and listening carefully can shift the dynamic in a conversation. It allows you to understand the other person's point of view, which in turn allows you to respond more thoughtfully and less emotionally. Listening doesn't mean agreeing with the other person, but it does mean giving them the space to express themselves. When you listen without interruption, without immediately thinking about what you're going to say next, you show respect for their perspective. This creates an environment where both people feel heard, and that, in itself, can reduce the intensity of the argument. You may not agree, but you're showing that you value their right to express themselves. And often, that alone can help calm things down. It's also important to remind yourself that arguments are not about winning. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to get fixated on being right. We all want to feel validated, to have our point of view acknowledged, and to feel like we've won the conversation. But when we focus on winning, we often lose sight of the bigger picture. The true goal of any argument should be understanding and resolution, not domination. Sometimes, even if you think you're right, letting go of the need to prove it can open the door to a more productive conversation. In fact, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do in an argument is to be the first to offer a solution or to compromise. This doesn't mean giving up your stance, but it does mean being open to meeting the other person halfway. When we focus too much on being right, we can miss opportunities to resolve the issue in a way that benefits both parties. Compromise is not about losing, it's about finding a way forward that respects both sides of the argument. Taking control of your emotions during an argument also means being mindful of your body language. Often, when we're upset, we don't realize how our physical responses are affecting the conversation. A clenched jaw, crossed arms, or a raised voice can make the situation worse, even if we don't intend to. These physical cues can make the other person feel defensive, which only escalates the tension. By staying aware of your body language and making an effort to remain calm physically, you create a safer environment for the conversation to unfold. Sometimes, taking a break during an argument can be incredibly helpful. If things are getting too heated, it's okay to step away for a moment. You don't have to resolve everything immediately. Taking a break doesn't mean giving up or ignoring the issue. It simply means that you're giving yourself and the other person time to cool off and gain some perspective. During this time, you can gather your thoughts, reframe the situation, and come back to the conversation with a calmer, more constructive mindset. The key is to communicate that you need a moment and to come back to the discussion with the intention of resolving the issue, not avoiding it. When you approach arguments with the mindset of solving the problem rather than winning the debate, you set the stage for a much healthier conversation. By focusing on the issue at hand, rather than getting caught up in personal attacks or hurt feelings, you shift the energy from conflict to cooperation. Instead of attacking the other person or their beliefs, ask questions, share your thoughts calmly, and focus on finding a way to work through the disagreement. When both parties are focused on the issue rather than each other, the argument becomes much more productive. It's also important to acknowledge your own role in the disagreement. While it may feel like the other person is entirely at fault, most arguments involve some level of misunderstanding or miscommunication on both sides. Reflecting on your own actions, words, and behaviors can help you see where you may have contributed to the conflict. This doesn't mean blaming yourself, but rather taking responsibility for how you've communicated or reacted. When both parties are willing to acknowledge their own contributions to the disagreement, the conversation becomes more collaborative, and the path to resolution becomes clearer. Another key to handling arguments is learning to separate the person from the problem. It's easy to attack someone's character when we feel upset or frustrated. We might say things like, "You always do this," or "You never listen." These statements make the person feel attacked, and they can quickly escalate the conflict. Instead of focusing on the person, focus on the issue. For example, you might say, "I feel frustrated when I don't feel heard," or "It's difficult for me when the situation goes unresolved." By addressing the problem, not the person, you keep the conversation focused on finding a solution, not tearing down each other's character. In any argument, one of the most important things to remember is that emotions are temporary. When we're in the heat of the moment, it feels like the disagreement is the most important thing in the world. But once the emotional intensity dies down, the issue usually doesn't seem as big as it did when we were caught up in the moment. Reminding yourself of this can help you stay calm during the argument. You may not resolve everything immediately, but knowing that emotions will settle and the situation will become clearer in time can help you approach the conversation with a sense of calm and patience. Learning to handle arguments effectively comes down to mastering the art of emotional regulation. It's about recognizing when your emotions are beginning to take over and taking the necessary steps to regain control. It's about pausing before you speak, considering your words carefully, and choosing to respond with intention rather than reacting with emotion. When you can do this, you'll find that even the most difficult arguments become more manageable, and you're able to resolve conflicts in a way that strengthens relationships rather than damaging them. Chapter 14. How to handle unexpected situations without panic. There are moments in life when things don't go as expected, when everything seems to suddenly change, and when we're faced with uncertainty. It could be a sudden job loss, a family emergency, an unexpected bill, or even a global crisis. The natural instinct in these moments is often to panic. When something unexpected happens, we tend to feel overwhelmed, unsure of how to proceed. The chaos and uncertainty can easily take over, leaving us feeling lost or helpless. But the key to handling unexpected situations is learning to stay calm. It's in these moments of uncertainty that our ability to remain grounded and composed can make all the difference. The first step in dealing with any unexpected situation is recognizing that panic will only make things worse. It's natural to feel anxious when things don't go as planned, but it's important to understand that panic doesn't help solve the problem. In fact, it often clouds our judgment and prevents us from thinking clearly. When we're anxious, we tend to act without considering the consequences. We might make rash decisions or act impulsively, which only leads to more confusion and stress. Instead of succumbing to panic, we can choose to stay calm and take a step back. Taking a step back doesn't mean ignoring the situation or pretending everything is fine. It's about creating a moment of pause where you can collect your thoughts and assess the situation with clarity. This pause allows you to slow down, breathe, and consider the next best move. It's in this space of calm that you can start to think logically and make decisions based on what's actually happening, not on the fear or anxiety that might be rising within you. One of the most helpful tools in unexpected situations is perspective. When something unexpected happens, our first reaction is often to blow it out of proportion. We see the worst-case scenario and imagine the worst possible outcome. But more often than not, the situation isn't as dire as it seems in the moment. By shifting our perspective and reminding ourselves that this too shall pass, we can reduce the intensity of our emotional response. We begin to see the situation more objectively, recognizing that while it might be challenging, it is also manageable. For example, if you suddenly lose your job, the initial shock and panic can make it feel like your entire life is falling apart. But when you take a step back and breathe, you realize that losing a job doesn't define your worth, and there are other opportunities out there waiting for you. You can take the time to assess your skills, update your resume, and begin searching for a new role, all while maintaining a calm, focused mindset. By shifting your perspective, you give yourself the space to take constructive action instead of getting lost in worry or fear. Another important aspect of handling unexpected situations is trust. It's easy to feel like the world is crumbling when things don't go as planned, but trust is the foundation that helps us get through these times. Trust that the situation, no matter how difficult, will eventually resolve. Trust that you have the strength and resilience to handle it, and trust that with time, the uncertainty will give way to clarity. Trust isn't about ignoring the reality of the situation, but about having confidence in yourself and your ability to adapt and move forward. When we trust ourselves, we create a sense of inner calm that allows us to handle unexpected challenges with grace. Trusting yourself means believing that you can figure things out, even when the path ahead isn't clear. It's about having the confidence to take things one step at a time, knowing that each small action brings you closer to a solution. When you trust yourself, you can remain calm even in the midst of chaos, because you know that you have the resources within you to find a way forward. Part of trusting yourself is learning to embrace uncertainty. Many times, when something unexpected happens, we feel the need to control the outcome. We want things to be certain, predictable, and within our grasp. But the truth is, life is full of uncertainty, and trying to control every aspect of it will only lead to frustration and anxiety. Embracing uncertainty means accepting that you don't have all the answers right away, and that's okay. It means being comfortable with the unknown and trusting that over time things will fall into place. The ability to accept uncertainty with calmness allows you to move through life's challenges with more ease and confidence. One of the most powerful ways to maintain calm during unexpected situations is to focus on what you can control. In any given moment, there are things you have control over, and there are things you don't. When something unexpected happens, it's easy to get caught up in the things that are outside of your control. But focusing on the things you can control gives you a sense of agency and helps you take action. Whether it's how you respond to the situation, how you manage your emotions, or what steps you can take to move forward, focusing on the controllable aspects of the situation allows you to feel more grounded and less overwhelmed. For instance, if you're dealing with a health scare, you may not be able to control the diagnosis or the treatment, but you can control how you respond. You can stay informed, seek support, and take the necessary steps to care for your body and mind. By focusing on the things you can control, you create a sense of stability and calm, even in the face of uncertainty. It's also important to remember that no matter how unexpected or challenging a situation may be, it is temporary. While it may feel overwhelming in the moment, most problems are not permanent. Time, perspective, and action often bring clarity and resolution. This understanding can help you stay grounded, knowing that whatever difficulty you're facing is not a permanent state of being. It's just one chapter in your journey, and with each passing day, you move closer to a solution or a way forward. In moments of unexpected stress, self-care becomes more important than ever. Taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally helps you maintain your calm and resilience in difficult times. Whether it's through exercise, meditation, journaling, or simply taking time to relax, self-care is essential for navigating life's challenges. When you're well-rested, grounded, and emotionally balanced, you're better equipped to handle whatever comes your way. Handling unexpected situations requires us to be adaptable. Life is constantly changing, and the ability to adapt to these changes with grace and composure is a skill that serves us well in all areas of life. When you embrace change and uncertainty with an open mind, you free yourself from the anxiety that comes with resisting it. Adaptability allows you to flow with life rather than fight against it. Ultimately, staying calm in unexpected situations is about trusting the process, trusting yourself, and focusing on what you can control. Life will always throw curveballs, but by practicing patience, perspective, and resilience, you can navigate them with confidence. The more you learn to stay calm, the more you'll find that you're capable of handling anything life throws your way. Chapter 15. The power of silence over unnecessary reactions. We live in a world that constantly demands our attention. The noise, the constant stream of information, the pressure to speak up and be heard, it all creates an environment where we feel like we have to respond to everything. Social media, conversations, emails, meetings, and even casual interactions are all filled with expectations to engage, comment, and participate. In many ways, it's become the norm to always be on, to share your opinion, to have a response for everything that comes your way. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent. There's incredible strength in silence, especially when it comes to avoiding unnecessary reactions that only contribute to more noise, more conflict, and more stress. It's easy to think that silence is the same as passivity, that staying quiet means we're not engaged, not participating, or not standing up for ourselves. But the reality is, silence is often a conscious choice that speaks volumes. It's about choosing not to respond in the heat of the moment, not to jump in with your own opinions, or not to engage in conversations that will lead nowhere. It's about holding space for yourself, taking a step back, and deciding that your peace of mind is more important than adding more noise to the world. Silence is powerful because it gives you the ability to choose when and how to respond, rather than being swept along by the constant pressure to react. We often forget how much power our words carry. Once something is said, it cannot be unsaid, and sometimes we regret speaking too soon. How many times have we said something in the heat of an argument or in a moment of frustration, only to wish we had held back? Words, especially when spoken out of emotion, can hurt, escalate conflicts, and create misunderstandings. Silence, on the other hand, provides a space to think before speaking, to filter out the emotion and come up with a response that is thoughtful, intentional, and grounded. It's in these moments of silence that we can evaluate our emotions, gain clarity, and make a choice about how we want to communicate. The challenge of silence isn't just about resisting the urge to speak up. It's about learning when silence is the most effective way to communicate. Not every situation requires us to have the last word, to defend ourselves, or to explain our actions. Sometimes the best thing you can do is say nothing at all. This doesn't mean that you're avoiding the issue or dismissing it. It means that you're choosing not to add fuel to the fire. Silence can de-escalate tension, allow for reflection, and create space for resolution. By choosing to remain silent in moments of conflict, you create an environment where both parties can think clearly, calm down, and come to a more rational solution. Silence is also an incredible tool for self-reflection. In our fast-paced lives, we rarely take the time to slow down, to sit with ourselves, and to truly think about what's going on inside. Our minds are constantly processing information, reacting to external stimuli, and making decisions. But silence allows us to step away from all of that and simply be with ourselves. It's in these moments of quiet that we can check in with our emotions, assess our thoughts, and gain clarity on what we truly want. Silence gives us the opportunity to listen to our inner voice, to align with our values, and to move through life with a stronger sense of purpose and direction. This kind of silence doesn't require isolation. It's about tuning out the external noise so you can hear your own thoughts. Whether it's a quiet moment in the morning before the day starts, a few minutes of solitude during a busy day, or taking a break from the noise of social media, these moments of silence are essential for maintaining balance and clarity. In a world that is constantly pulling our attention in different directions, silence allows us to reclaim our own space, to focus on what matters, and to reconnect with our true selves. Silence is also crucial in relationships. In the heat of an argument or a disagreement, it's easy to start talking over each other, to defend ourselves, or to make hurtful remarks. But often, what's needed is not more words, but the willingness to listen. When we choose silence in these moments, we open up the opportunity for better communication. We allow the other person to express their thoughts and feelings without interruption, and we give ourselves the chance to process what's being said before responding. This kind of silence where we listen actively and attentively strengthens relationships by creating a space for understanding, empathy, and connection. Sometimes, silence is also a form of protection. When someone is being rude, disrespectful, or aggressive, we may feel compelled to respond or to defend ourselves. But there are times when silence is the best response. When we don't engage with negativity, we prevent it from escalating. Silence can serve as a shield, allowing us to protect our peace without getting involved in toxic dynamics. By remaining silent, we send a clear message that we will not participate in drama, conflict, or disrespect. Silence in these moments isn't about avoidance. It's about maintaining our boundaries and choosing to disengage from situations that aren't worth our energy. Silence is not about suppressing our feelings or avoiding confrontation. There are certainly times when speaking up is necessary, when we need to express ourselves, set boundaries, or share our opinions. But the key is knowing when silence is the most powerful response. It's about having the self-awareness to recognize when speaking will only escalate a situation, or when remaining quiet will create the space needed for resolution. Silence is about choosing your battles, knowing that not every moment requires a response. It's about preserving your energy, your peace, and your well-being by letting go of the need to respond to everything. When we learn to embrace silence, we also learn to embrace stillness. In stillness, there is clarity. In silence, there is peace. The more we allow ourselves to be still and quiet, the more we tap into a deeper sense of calm and wisdom. We become less reactive, more thoughtful, and more intentional in our actions and words. Silence becomes a source of strength, an anchor in the chaos of everyday life. It allows us to respond with wisdom, to approach challenges with a clear mind, and to maintain our emotional balance in difficult situations. The power of silence is not in what it does to others, but in what it does for us. It creates the space we need to be more present, more mindful, and more aligned with who we truly are. It's a gift we give ourselves away to step back from the noise of the world and reconnect with our inner peace. The next time you're faced with a difficult situation or a moment of tension, remember the power of silence. In that quiet space, you'll find the strength to handle anything that comes your way with calm, clarity, and grace.